balugid swel bel mergid rogoy tagid mla mo ita 8 minutes ra taklo mo bodo litial public hearing ergid tial public hearing ergid al swel ba public hearing ergid la Senate Bill 12-22 ilngia amendment ra procurement law last week agi ulu public hearing lo menteri contractor survelaw mle RSPP over 120 contractors and hindi nakal sige del number amnay sin di tirigel akora most impacted tirigel am los ilongget awera bodo mo le medik kutial te al le bok siokara arang lela kamitil mera kami ngatiang so tel kami tirigel ra CIP ngarngia angkal ngara kadakmek at ngakal Senator Basilius nga Vice Chair adiregal el Vice President tra Senate el Senator Cuarte adiregal tra member Senator Nakamura member din dibus el time dibus belaw munda katselo bangget tra member adiregal ngara katrugol at ngakal Senator Mangsaw ma Senator Whips madiregal atangkal Senator Tabulwal Senator Udim ami ding motibil meud makti mukodong yang klel malme di metlor kumam nga kamal may nga sulela atangkal President ra Senate ma Senator Baules ma atangkal Senator Mario floor leader ra Senate madiregal Senator Pedro Senator Talam sa most of iril may mga limit gider tial ukme oyang gider tial public hearing obonggela ay agagi del key stakeholders infrastructure development housing for everyone's information invitation amlora Bureau of Public Works National Government el tiri atial amendment trala amal mo impacted tiril overwhelmingly diregal gibna invite ra National Development Bank mapala housing el mail dimna sa on mo mangel was tial bila ulgum motokoy el ngari nga impact ringing is it gonna be negative or positive el girela operations ro kami revenue stream ro kami and how can we help also kung ngari nga igigidel impact el momes el niya wabol detrimental el mora operations or kami revenue stream at the same time indiregal lulela es el olbira kalulaw indiregal me sola kami tira CIP indiregal megang oklo bang kami indiregal gukura mo understand el policies er kami initiatives er kami as we move on towards the end of year 2025 mang waisege de akmal merenga sulu rogoy mlarinya ongit telmle mlara pala housing lo sia chairman Rudim al ngarinya diregal wan ramal lobrado meeting girel ngaringira adimre del time mang akmongaulal momsang manggukti mo share sil el guknya osingira el giret tial 12/22 kita matengel lo sia existing procurement law ngaring sa local preference section also was any contract CIP contract awarded to a locally owned contractor performance payment bonds are automatically waived. Okay, we also know that any CIP project which is 250,000 and under, the performance and payment bonds, these are two bonds, can be waived. And then anything above 250,000 can be only reduced to 50%. And then there's no preference to locals or foreign-owned companies. It's applicable to all contractors. So this amendment in 12/22, I was say the raise is still 100,000 and more 250,000. And the reason behind that, I was say domestic allocations most of the projects CIP office director Omar Adam and this start 250,000 and more. So the 100,000 and below threshold has become obsolete. So we need to raise that bar. So the proposed amendment is that anything below 250,000 awarded to a locally owned Palawan company, the performance and payment bonds will be automatically waived. Also in the amendment, anything above 250 and below 500, locally owned companies can ask for a full waiver. However, foreign-owned companies can only ask for 50%. Anything above 500,000, both local and foreign-owned, can only be reduced by 50%. And then also proposed under this bill is legislative criteria that the contracting officer needs to consider when deciding whether to approve or disapprove reductions of bonds or waivers. Okay, even until now, those criteria do not exist legally. So contracting officers have been using best management practice to do that, and we have an opportunity to legalize it. So so sige na agora in a nutshell ang overview del proposal amendment. Mga artiang kami are okay ka ma'am, o mga artiang maldi so ma'am will pick on your brains. So pick your brains mo mga losing. Ngara ko singil tang adagi mesang sa edal kay ngasel sumukli palu mo tal mutul tangtig dos il most of el invite most il alar tokol other belaw choice vertical infrastructure development blue belaw leng aktilo kan trigal contractor sa last week lo say at any given time ngidil contractor lo ba imol project o ba project ra CIP office until has 5 more projects on hand. So that says our other these last projects are delayed, the completions are delayed. In fact, I think we have a backlog of projects until 2021, Mr. Otto. Oo. Mang why say with all due respect til mora chairman Rudy lang ani halbor ngi mga ulan mas kaw mo share views ra papalahosing giret.
Malungil suelpe ako tak madura nga sule me chairman na invite ra pala housing mo part tial hearing maktir malungil suel al mora Senate President, Senate Vice President, Senate Floor Leader, marokul senators. Sulang al introduce rak so nga kangartiang al lomte ang other alela Palau Housing Authority Board lengu kotelgerel buiger kama marokoy mga ngartel board of course nga niya Scott Yano, Vice Chairman nga niya members al James Mother Aloy ma Claude Dil Singew. Ya obanggekel ngartia nga niya accountant ergid ra Chun Ushibata ma inspector gid ra Mitchener basebs. Mang sulang ngartel te aleng nga kakoram extend ra lan sa araw nga makadolngit mo se dik ngar kusperti del time kuktik pa sa position na pala housing ora kural. Ma gimle review te del 12+22 Senate Bill 12+22 ya pala housing rel ang arokul project terniya di ngara ngariora kotel esel bla di 75,000 mang di got esel existing el regulation el sila mentioning at chairman 100,000 egi already ngarior ngi mang te already dagim sal impacted ringil regulation. However kadome sa ara laklal dim lang mas so I'm sure in the upcoming years yung mo niya tema la pala housing esel 75,000 na mo gid along si as long as able to 100 egi kuk ma subject til mortial existing regulation also mong international contractor magibay mal appreciate tiagi del ludasro ol top danya ol bill ngul morbab malso mo gimo ol ngas ra loan ceiling ra kamam egi mal mall mal maintain tiagi del flexibility aong erung en kloa ko ra rior mal dasol gid ma pala housing ma of course all bill dasol ngi atora wa subdivision mo dia the individual blay ya bodoro la subdivision ng mo lang 100,000 mang I think agidre kalmal support tel dasul mo 250,000 mabodoro la subdivision ng malmol misegi del environment luul mar contractor sa kongel may mala project ra mas el malmol ngaringi I think kung kurang ngila bla lagi ngalam lang start ra right ko tel nga kikarel contract dimral mo close el doral mo. I think ayos pa igid kapag patingal advantage kung sa edal pal housing al maintain or contractor amal mo may. Abay dim na niya adi suggestion al meso alother si Chairman Senator Malayray since a performance plan ma payment plan da kada kalsal impactor ma'am given the raise mangal mo dakal impact. By the meso alother sa adi suggestion al gira la bid band. So ngayon sa level gi mulder sira April 24 just for gukti for the committee's record. Hindi so kading utal teal hindi na so kal offer kung sa maybe ang anya teal al kuk offer alternative al mora bid band di wadol to the alternative al mora performance band. So adim na so kalot to dil suggestion na el al time ya bid band require 10% ra klungel engel bid. In order mo mala bid band din gire mal mo sirsi o sisil value or sige del 10% or ko tunga udu dem deposit udu dem lo sisil value. So di mo adal more self flexibility al kuk offer mo sa method rula das kuk kora bid securing declaration. Sa kuk platak experience ngira kuk pebira contract instead of 10% engel bid band engel contractor o to bidi aba bilingel al mula sa sumak to mirtel contract or tal bida mo awana ringi or pull ringi nasabit ringi pull ringi rather than harar sige rather than kal employer al ngutal 10% al bid band yak forfeit ta future te al contract lo bangel kayidel. So example pala housing sumang 75,000 ya 10% al bid band 7,500 instead of harar siyak bid securing declaration nga kalabang pala housing sell duration as digidal small sell 2 years and 5 years matsumak mo birugol or aktumalital bid ang bilulak mo sa sell project tra next year or following year amodak eligible ring until mo make sense ikal mutal ngukti another type of flexibility rather than sir saw those ang ngukti mo stand by your word type of thing hindi mo nagigid comment sulang.
Sulang Chairman Rudim awera dolmol me akti soal ayamar direkal low ay selo siya Senator Inabuang at talongget magsubes si Senator Inabuang mo kung mo isa ko mal mo alado lang sa other public works Mr. Rudim ka kamalakora atukora performance ma payment band direkal wanda mokte katyal tel meeting ergi al sil sa direkal soala ka meeting mo understand raw sing kaming adra ngara pala housing makarang protect the interest ter kami al sila contract in the absence of a performance ma payment bond yung guk ngara makara manage a risk ra contractual kami administer
takam sulang chairman so el al timing because at under 100,000 ang dekatol tautra performance bond by the retain baby regel those payments of the mora a contractor lak with the hold until 3 months after mo ka blayel mubi na okyak after 3 months kanya okyak gida mo release or sell retainage of course hindi ka nganya 1 year warranty mong elagi practice or sige ko rada kamal clol record ra contractor mo ito rally titigil ko contractor mo ito rally lagi kaya uncle progress payment masidal ko uzo da de ko rega dangi plus retainage as edal mo siya ko contractor complete travel.
Okay, sulang sell tigingel bid band ako mo understand say gidel ko kasi in lieu of a 10% del band di bol ko promissory note to la si also magi ko mo malubak tisay del kung somil hour del menage nga kasinde da kak na change ama indra malubak pull out en wak sel di sel te legal dia clue to participate ra procurement or gamiul maral more madat ending ngora make sense to ko hindi sel wala misering en kadamal gigrel blue di makasayal contractors especially are qualified mong kale kulbol luulel dil top del mong el kukul nga di angkel akong bali el lutel may dil imol ade blal change angkel di ngilul das mag ere committee mal appreciate ra suggestion raw gimo mutul mo meseringira am that time for everyone's information naringa on 3 contractors I think from one that I know of. Gukulang ito kasi di bola kabid band. Mong moda kabid band, da ka performance band, da ka payment band. Mong kalit sal mal mo ko ra declare the area other public works shall manage a CIP program dia ka protection or team. Aktio ay sa sige del guk mlarinya guk ngod olongit tel ngara sige del tora bid band del dire mel ngara contractors. Sulang chairman. Al ngarinya member ngarinya kadil mora pala housing elang aware of dismiss ringi. Kalbo Florida Mario.
Sula chairman ngadak member rada pala housing hindi ko ra dire kalo ungil ko mara selbon mereka aku parta project ko maraw di manelo sing beto ka ablay adire kal dimna sta tawro ringi modia ka ro ringi mun mauril time akno find out lo sa tangariya uktra contraction no take over ay gigid no finish ay gigid ablay man ilay gigid ang igel ko ra tel igarwa banding ato ko ra security maumna sa gigid ngida lo mes sa gigid lo sa sing kom ngario le kom ngara 75,000 million ding other work kom na mo girin mabliri ra selora laurel mo menengel time el itia de lora le se dire mal dalaring al morgal adra lo blaim kam ko dire di mo sa segid lo se kom kara mo take care sulang
ngariya kalil mora pala housing chairman malu tirgal terul wonderful staff for pala housing. Kalbo Senator Inabo mabombre kelbo Salvador.
Sulang chairman di sokalo o kora o kira pala housing alwa say ngania a construction company award the multiple housing project al morngil way the imol construction company marulatung tering for apply consecutively if that happens yung makraom secure performance legal project. So lang yung chairman.
Sulang Senator Inabo mang alta megal rogul contractor armor lang the individual alblay. Naya ko alda swam mo lengdre kalmring sa the contractor almobilize di mo rawan alblay roid. Lengdre kalmring lagi sel tigimpid ng takal bato arme bid. Mong naya alda swam at musekuk let's say sa amuda la application or okya kalmrula blidra let's say ngar along ing sa dal loda kalmo wan albid. Ding so far ndra gim ka contract lagi mo toptil waisay di sige da one raldas pero ti da ko concern uktora wa security mo so magi mo taw tring gim para mutul consider lang di moktera malum da sir say is just because sa the bidal di one al blaying mal makasar bidders
Medic utul ga dikko adi read the question na inabol because of your answer ulugum ko the rule tagidil amendment tra procurement law mo tokoy mang ako mesaring lo sing mo close te all small medium enterprises mo sa choice para government contracts en umamesaring ani possible negative impact tra participation ra procurement ra mo
da makadim nak kumdas suringi chairman but that's a good point gukto na sagim discussing il board ma omgal obis hindi nakal point al give them raise ngi hale gibom ko mo mesa list contractors I think lang give them submit mora senator gim ko rapay mo mesa wat ang atrigel ako klot ding list qualified contractors ang malbatok di sa lobora article actually apply may dakal salbtom hagi mo mesa that's a good point din nagim mo dasuri.
Okay, and then again, select contractor for certain procurement. And do you consider existing projects on hand workload that might really malimisan masang mandakal spell fully deliver on a timely basis. Do you consider those? Kung may understand the procurement system ra pala housing maun makukir.
Sulangnya chairman o yung atal ko kora oger o yung kong part legal consideration. I guess assume mo to kora ko makal so del eregi mo maskara uri.
Sulang lubo Senator Talams.
Sila chairman disalogera chairman pala housing authority Miguel contractor umium komgora factory na inflation agel contractor lo mesra inflation masumang masara laklan in civil la adjuster el beisra inflation factor sa laklan.
Senator ndi kasel once the sign el alta mang 75 ceiling mang segim sign contractor ako kumla sila bid price. I mean sila contract price mun di wise hindi kal malenge la contract gim el nganya pa inflation adjustment.
Ilagel lero kumulo ay sik Miguel mle appraisal loan molto tangara $75,000 isira albonya PCSD nilasan mo $100,000 ayun the contract mle stop malube kum mle increase the funding mo
Hindi akong mle apay blima apply doru lamle 60,000 ekadamle review ra contract ceiling idemle increase mo 75,000. Di lang since then ekadamle increase mo 75 bro 2 years ago. Mga erul ra karang amle memo ekimle increase mo 75 but since then di kayim increase. However the direct follow up prices ra klalong nganya increase may lang it's something we're thinking about din diragi mo tuti. Mula mention ko sa sumti nga increase tial ceiling or tial proposed bill mo 100 to 250 ng bayo nga suguma mal suguma gimo increase ra 75,000 more ba eng sa dal malmol martil do CCL procedure rather than ma-require wa performance fund payment fund mamangal amo ring ra contractor may choose ra pala housing project.
Ano ka rin mo pala housing? Ay po, Senator Taulwal.
Sorry, Chairman. Udi maktidulitial sildo mesetialis te trigel contractor. Yang ari trigel dodong trin malungil. And then dia kasil mga government tangara tungli ul alsilse. Trigel gidil lang asel mga asim ilmora government tren takay. Ito na taong mula lima man ko low price. Sige dapat di ko labi kerengilang sel mangim tum trigel gidilungin. Ilmorsay. Ito na taong tertil mamula legal blail. Dos pe quality ringil blira adal ki. Sige dapat ramal pikerengilang tiang malungir murang kalkan traktor lang. Mula mga asim ilmora ngar sel ngarbabal takay. Diesel mo daburingi. Quality kan traktor mo mula blira adal ya price kami adal sa esringi ma okay argito munda kasuel lo tukul sel ran ma kola di melbade por seguide chelo se kam kola kuk heaven mo blira ade ya blira ada mal momrin ma kola omda suni sula
Sulang Senator Taulwal maral wadoru rate al marbebile baby laguk adangok lemang adamralo sikrole la sagad makarang sel hope para kami tio si sel doctor lagi sige del simber mulguk el blangas tiragan mla modu ngara pala housing NDBP guk mora a national government infrastructure guk te elir tiragal ngari ortil guk mas elme o agunda sula sing adi mongil busula ani angot ani okay alage Chairman Rudim akmal ba nga sulem ko tigal staff rapala housing madingelo sing ngariya meeting oborngi ngariya meeting oborngi akmal ngel omoral kal amang ri tigal terul staff mo da kalsi mo lo ay sige de adimetegi de akamiti excuse kamil tede akamam gimolmol lo bangela NDBP ma Public Works sulang. Adalo kita continue ra tel public hearing mo mrenga sulo la National Development Bank nos ilal me join ri tel meeting Mr. Fletcher ma President Proctor aktiral mrenga sulo la Bureau of Public Works patient certil mangila po naman kay Galbang we're saving the best for last. So again, I'm having a set of questions Harley President. So the questions are basically the same that went to Palau Housing. We wanted to sit down with you more than your response in writing. We wanted to sit down with you and discuss the proposed bill, Senate Bill 12-22, which basically the intent is to try and ease up the performance and payment bond requirements so that small, medium enterprises can enter into government contracts, especially infrastructure development. We note that NDBP in the past, I think it's more than several years, has been one of the fundamental partners of the infrastructure development in that you provide the bonding services, performance and payment bonds. And so what we wanted to know was, coming from the bank, if this were to materialize, does it have an impact on your operations, revenue stream, whatnot? And we wanted to know if those impacts were positive or negative, and if they are negative, herein lies the opportunity that we can work together and polish the bill to a final product that captures every stakeholder's input and become make it more successful. So with that said, I yield the floor to you, Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Proctor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Senate President, Floor Leader, Senators. Thank you for inviting us to the hearing. And let me say at the very beginning that from NDBP's perspective, we're very supportive of the proposed changes. I think it's a very good initiative to try to reduce the bonding requirements on contractors. And I also like the fact that the smaller contractors in Palau are given some beneficial treatment relative to the foreign contractors. And I think those two are very positive developments, and I would encourage those changes to be approved. Against that context, I just have a few small suggestions or comments for consideration. I think one of the questions that you had was what would be the impact on NDBP for these changes. The total revenue that we earn on an annual basis from fees related to performance bonds and bid bonds, payment guarantee bonds, it represents about 4% of our total revenue each year. So these changes are not going to have any significant impact on the financial performance of the bank, just to allay any concerns about that. The second thing, as a suggestion, I know it's been many years since the original procurement bill was drafted and approved. I wonder whether it would be helpful just to remove some of the workload on the OEK if this bill incorporated some inflation adjustments going forward. Instead of just locking in certain amounts, in 10 years' time, maybe $500,000 would be too small, and whoever is in OEK at the time has to bring back another bill to do what you're doing today, which is increasing some of the limits. So just for consideration, you may want to build in an inflation adjustment, especially given raw material costs and a lot of discussion about tariffs at the moment. Third minor comment would be on page 2, there's a reference to foreign contractors. It's on line 6. Foreign contractors are more risky. I would suggest that that wording is perhaps amended. I don't think foreign contractors are more risky, but I do think it's entirely appropriate for Palau to encourage and support the SME contractors, the domestic SME contractors, over and above foreign contractors. So I think the intent behind the bill remains the same. It's just a nuance in the wording. Fourth comment would be, at the moment, the NDBP Act has a requirement that we can have an exposure to a single borrower up to 20% of our capital, which at the moment equates, the 20% number equates to about $6.4 million. So in the future, if there are any major contracts, whether it be the port or the airport or the hospital or whatever it may be, if there is a very large contract that is larger than 20% of the capital base of NDBP at that time, NDBP would not be able to provide the bonding requirements. And so, again, one thing to consider may be that for very large contracts, there's some leeway for CIP to provide some additional waivers relative to the total bonding requirement. It's just a suggestion. It would then allow NDBP to continue to service the bonding needs on those large contracts. And then one final suggestion would be that at the moment, when we issue a bond, the bond remains in place despite stage payments being made and completion certificates being issued. So one way to give some additional relief to contractors would be to reduce the bonding requirement as completion certificates are issued on stage payments and payments are made. So if it's a $100,000 contract and the first stage there's a $50,000 payment, then the bonding requirement reduces to the remaining $50,000. Again, it just allows small contractors to recycle the collateral that's supporting their bonds that much faster and gives CIP more potential bidders on contracts. So apart from that, I think those would be my comments. But I would say I support the proposed amendments.
Mr. Proctor, in regards to the reduction of bond as the project progresses, what sort of documentation would the bank like to see? So the gentlemen to your left are aware of it.
I think to the extent that CIP has issued a statement, actually made a stage payment to the contractor, and they can show us that that payment has been made, then it would allow us to reduce the credit exposure against that contractor, and it would then allow release some capital faster into the system. I have my risk officer next to me as well, so in case you would like to say anything, or you're okay.
I guess I'm just wanting to understand. So if a contractor submits to the bank like a payment application that's been certified by the government, and those payment applications, I believe, show percentage complete, would that be satisfactory to the bank?
As
Or
lo-
do you want another type of document from the government?
what I want to know is that the payment has been made. So I don't want a promise from CIP to make the payment. I want to know the payment has been made. As long as it's been made, then I'm happy to reduce it.
Yeah, let me just add that while very productive your comments are on that reduction of the bonding as payment is being paid, I think that maybe that kind of policy can be implemented between the bank and the executive branch more than legislation. I don't know. It's just maybe you've been I know you've been working in silos, but you've been partners. So maybe here lies the opportunity for the CIP office, Bureau of Public Works per se, and NDBP to sit down and say, okay, maybe this is something that so in order to allow more bidders to participate in upcoming projects rather than be locked and not being able to participate, then maybe this is a working relationship policy that both entities can work towards achieving.
I hear that, Chair. The only concern I would have is if the legislation says that we have a requirement to issue a bond for this amount, I don't want to be at risk of the public auditor telling me that I'm not meeting the requirements under the legislation.
Okay, thank you. And then you had a statement about the 20% threshold, which is 6.2 million. Did you say?
Yeah, so this is a banking regulation, which is in the NDBP Act. And the reason for this regulation is to ensure that banks don't take too much exposure to a single risk. So NDBP is allowed to put up to 20% of its capital against one borrower, or exposure in this case for contractors. And at the moment, because our capital is 32 million, it's about 6.4 million, which is our single borrower limit.
Okay. Any questions for NDBP? Yes, Senator Inabo.
Sulangit Chairman. Mr. Proctor, thank you for coming to the hearing this afternoon. I think our concern is that the bond is to cover the projects just in case something didn't work out. Maybe the progress payment is not a guarantee that there's nothing wrong with the project. And that's how do we mitigate that kind of risk is our concern as well. And with that, I would like to ask, what has been your experience with the bank providing performance bond and payment bond for projects? What is the rate of your loss due to what have you spent to guarantee these projects, and what kind of review do you do? Financial review? How do you make sure the company is able to finish the project? We'd like to understand a little bit of that, because the wording of the law has to make sure that if anything happens to the project, there's performance bond that's enough to make sure the project is finished. So we would like to be able to balance how we not just depend on the progress as well.
So I think there's two parts to that question. On the first part, my assumption is that if CIP have reviewed the works to date and have agreed that they've been completed to satisfaction and have made the first stage payment, or whatever the stage payment is, that there is no longer a risk of issues with that particular piece of work. So the remaining risk The remaining performance risk relates to the remaining phases of the project. So that's why I suggested that we incorporate something like that. Clearly, there can still be problems in the later phase of a project, but it just allows the total amount of the bond to be reduced. On the second question, I've been in Palau perhaps about 18 months. In that time, we've had one problem where CIP called the performance bond and the bank executed its responsibilities. We brought in another contractor. The contractor completed the project. So it resulted in a loss for the bank. So when we evaluate contractors and risks, we look at not just their financial standing, but also their performance. And so we tend to have a list of proven contractors that we feel more comfortable working with. But we also need to be flexible to allow brand new SMEs to enter the business. And so for those new entrants, we limit the number of contracts that we allow at one time. For more established contractors, we're happy to see them working on multiple contracts at one time.
So when we are paying based on the progress of the project, and whatever remaining contract price that needs to be done should be equivalent to the unfinished work on the project, right? So why would the bank have a loss on that? Because the remaining project money should be able to cover the rest of the project. So how come the bank had a loss?
Well, this was one particular case with a contractor who failed to perform. And naturally, there's a time difference between when the initial contract was started and by the time that the new contractor is introduced to that project. Perhaps there has to be some remediation work done due to previous failures of the contract, or indeed raw material prices may have increased, or indeed some of the work that was claimed to have been done, or products and materials claimed to have been purchased, were not purchased. So there tends always to be, in this situation, some risk of loss to the bank when a performance bond is called.
So exactly our concern, because if the project is 50% finished and the performance bond is reduced by 50%, but then something happens and the contractor walks away from the site and the remaining 50% cannot finish the project, then that's a risk of loss to the government. And that evaluation of how much performance bond is really needed to finish the project has to be evaluated more, not just based on the completion of the project.
So I think if that is the concern, perhaps apply this reduction or based on release of stage payments just to the amounts larger than 500,000. Because for the amounts less than 500,000, the law is already proposing a discount to the bonding requirement. There's a up to 50% discount for payment guarantees and a 50% discount for performance bonds in the way that I read this. So perhaps the reduction for stage payments should only apply to the contracts larger than 500,000, where it would have more of an impact.
Mr. Proctor, is there a way to guarantee these projects based on a lower fee for the bond, so the contractor can still have the bond and at maybe a reduced amount, but guaranteed a financial review and asset review to make sure this contractor can deliver on this project?
So, as I mentioned, the fees that we charge, when I first came, I reviewed all our fees, and this was one of the fees that we reduced. Our standard fee is 2%, And I think in comparison, the other entities in Palau, predominantly insurance agencies that issue bonds, typically their pricing can be 3 or 3.5%. So the bank is already much lower than than other parties. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that fee, part of it is to cover the administration for the bank in just arranging the bonds. Part of it is to mitigate the losses that we know we will take in the future. We just don't know which particular contract we will take the loss from. So there's no real significant benefit to Palau for the bank to reduce its fees any further. I think we've already done as much as we can. I think it's up to the bank to manage its own risk profile. I'm satisfied that we have the right balance at the moment. If we're taking the occasional loss on contracts, that's acceptable. If we have a string of regular losses on contracts, there's something wrong in our risk management. If we're not taking any losses on contracts, then maybe we're not being flexible enough.
Do you also provide performance bond and payment bond to foreign contractors?
Yes, we do, but 99.9% of what we do is with local companies, and we always prefer to work with local companies.
Ngayon agan, ngayon bibira banggal, they provide bonding beside the NDBP. In your experience, commercial.
Tilagan mo na committee?
Oh, ako ganun.
Yes, other than NDBP, ngayon surety companies will provide bonds. Mga banggal provide irrevocable letters of credit.
Yung ngayon, bibira businesses that are in the business of providing bonding.
Yes,
Yes.
insurance companies exist for that.
Ngayon, bibigay ito mga individual construction that put up their bonds. Point na ako kasi other related laal tiyom da surtirang ngayon affecting moral behavior entities. Lemle suggestion na sa mula lara kasi pero CIP sa ultimo doon kayo dalawang ng bank. Hindi, are there other banks that would be impacted? Kung gano'n ako experience na other.
Tilo, Vice President Corte, you will get more to with other public works on our same. Hindi, over 95% egal contracts 500,000 and under. NDBP, the primary insurer, provider of performance and payment bond.
And for the next 10 years, 15, 20 years, the assumed said they will bear that burden. Is that what we're anticipating?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nga kanil mo NDBP? Takalbera committee? Yes, Senator Nilabang.
So, Chair, one of the biggest challenges the contractors had, we met with them on Friday, was putting up collateral for the bonding services you provide. Could you explain what type of collateral you take and how do you take it?
All of the bonding that we do is collateralized by real estate. And that is the way to mitigate the risk for the bank. And that is what has been, I think, the difficulty for contractors, as you're referring to, Senator. Because especially for the smaller contractors, they struggle to source the real estate that is, freely available for us to secure. And that is why it's so important to make this procurement law more flexible, especially for the smaller contractors. That's why I'm happy to see the proposed direction.
So if a smaller contractor came to you with an appraised piece of property that was appraised at $1 million, what sort of bonding capacity could they get with that? I'm trying to see I'm asking you what the discount rate is. If I can get straight to the point.
Malungulit tasil se chairman sulang rakadim senator girebang. Suma ada $1 million real estate. And di moyor was a real estate ngaringi development rebel al uben di utmo. Ya suma di utmeng 50%. Kodomisra banding facility 500,000. Ya suma ngaringi development rebel ya duk ma gidal ngwa appraisal mongol appraisal ngi mo ngel waseng wangara value regal talo ngarbebul.
So the appraised value would also include, again, developments on the real estate. So is that still at a 50% discount?
I'm sorry, yeah, malungilger. So mangaring development rabebula tial utma, ikatuko komesra 75% our value as a emil band.
Okay, so, and if I could just follow that same train of thought. So if a small contractor or any contractor comes to the bank and says, I want to bond $1 million project, how much land would they need to put up?
Al time,
And their bonding requirements are 100% payment and 100% performance.
okay, mas suguma ada ngai gidal contractor ang project til 1 million. Al time ang ospera $1 million il performance band, ma $1 million il payment band. Baka misra banding requirement at 2 million. E kada sugumang ospera ultimate security di ultima ingirel 4 million a value ring.
Tilagid up na suakal mo understand rin. So, there's the challenge that the contractors came up with on Friday. Because it's 100% performance, 100% payment, which is now 200%, plus a 50% discount on the appraised value of the land. So it's actually a 400% bond. That's actually what it is, collateralized by real estate. So that's the challenge our contractors are having.
Can I just add on, please, to what we're kind of discussing? So kung we would still page 1 o line 20, and gora mamasada combined payment bond. Makumis ringi tiang sil kung ringi gora wat kung luwas tiang adi imol bond ngia both performance it is timing payment bond. Emerkong isel debora page 2 silwa line 20 mo badula 27 ing dir kamasada tablol kakarosul al bonds. So they don't jive. Mang lagi dito ko omesh se amend sa gid page 2. Al di mo kuktis masadra combined payment bond. A performance in payment bond mas kung sa gid project to sa dring yang irebang al wasang 1 million e gidam sang okay ka 50% til discount ra bonding e agar okay ka di bonder sa gid 500,000. Hindi ka bundle 500,000 payment e 500,000 el performance.
Silbol combine the performance ma payment bundle di mo one. Okay. And what ibol one el bundle 1 million. Al sum karidu sa inyo 50% adi half a million.
50%
Mo half a million.
Contractor agilal di bandra 500,000. E kita automatic bundle combined bond. El 500,000 niya cover egal tablol payment ma performance.
I say. However, sell and I pick up from Mr. Proctor's statement supporting the intent of this bill to ease up on the bonding requirements. So I guess one of, not I guess, I think, let's say, one of the purpose of this meeting with the NDBP today was to see how flexible you can be in that 50%. Also, kung combine el mo one. So, if we combine these bonds el mo one, mo 200% the bond, namo di 100% el one bond, and then we have a reduction there. Okay, so we're extending this opportunity more small SMEs, and then about a nega lang aguk mutya wasing 1 million value at the million the tell example 1 million and then the 50% evaluation of ang undeveloped property. How flexible can the bank be on that 50%? Can you look at a higher value instead of 50%? So it becomes a joint effort between the ROP and NDBP towards upbringing of the SMEs.
Chair, if I'm understanding you correctly, are you asking us to amend our risk criteria for collateralization? Is that what you're asking?
I'm basically asking you to consider.
I've considered it long in the past, and the answer is no. And the reason for that, let me explain. One of my big concerns about Palau is the very limited resourcing in particular specialist fields. And one of those specialist fields is independent property evaluation. So we have a very limited, almost monopoly position in property appraisal. The bank places an enormous amount of risk on the accuracy and dependency of those independent appraisals. So I am not willing to amend our risk profile for collateralization. What I would say is that the 50% waiver is not an NDBP issue. It's a CIP government issue. It really is the government risk to decide how much bonding is required. Whatever that decision is, NDBP, its role is to support the bonding needs.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. I think the question was not to have the bank change their policy. I think the question was how flexible can the bank be, but I think you answered that pretty straightforward. So, which means that if this SB 12-22 becomes law, Calvin and Mr. Otto there would have to look at their reductions just to be able to have their contractors walk in and get a bonding from your side. This is a question on I know that NDBP is not subject to Title 40, which is the procurement law of the Republic, when it comes to construction procurement, the housing development. How do you protect the bank's interest in terms of contracts? Do you impose similar performance and payment bonds, or?
For housing, for example, the contracts are by the homeowner independently with the contractors. So the bank does not intervene in that contractual arrangement. What we do, however, is we monitor the contractors who perform and contractors who don't perform. And so we withhold the right not to provide a mortgage for a house if we don't believe that contractor has a good track record. But ultimately, it's for the homeowner to decide which contractor to use.
Senator Corte.
So look at Mr. Otto then. So if the reason why the bank actually expose itself or basically collateralize at a big discount because they're worried about the appraisal and and people who actually appraise it more accurately? Because I know some of them are not. Anyway, how do we solve that? So that can the bank hire somebody to actually do that, or can the government hire somebody to actually look at? Because if that's the way that the collateral now, we can actually do 50% bonding and payment and all of this, but if the collateral is still the hindrance, then maybe we're not solving the issue. Is there any way we can solve it for the bank so you don't collateralize at that really high level?
Two comments. One, it's a great question. I think this space of white-collar roles related to the construction center offers a huge opportunity for young Palauans to stay in Palau and earn a very decent salary. So it applies not just to property appraisers, it applies to building engineers, draftspeople, architects. That whole area of job opportunity, I would love to see the college offer specialist programs to encourage Palauans to move into that space, because we definitely need more competition. The only way that we can try to get competition for property appraisal at the moment is to go offshore. And the reality is that foreigners simply don't understand local Palauan land market as well as local Palauans. The second thing, though, I would say is that the 50% discount on real estate is not atypical across the banking industry. It is fairly normal in developing markets. In highly developed markets, there may be a different percentage discount, but I've worked in many developing markets, and 50% is the norm, typically for exactly the reasons that we're talking about: the uncertainty about land ownership, the uncertainty about appraisals, etc.
Lamogile, Vice President. Yeah, please let me bring the discussion back to SP 12-22. You said that the bank charges 2% on these particular bonds, performance and payment bonds. If the bill were to become law, it's apparent that this will have an impact on your revenue stream. A lot of locally owned contractors, 500 and below, can get zero bonding, can be awarded projects without bonding. And so my question to the bank is, will that impact the rates that we're looking at now at 2% because of loss of opportunity?
No, Chairman, we won't adjust the rates. You'll have seen recently the bank just announced another interest rate reduction for commercial mortgage loans. Since I've arrived, we've been trying to reduce rates across the board, both on fees as well as loans. So this is the latest step. And no, we wouldn't adjust our pricing to take into account lost revenue. I'd much rather encourage the development of a Palauan contracting business. That's more important than earning fees from performance bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Any more questions? Senator Basilius, Vice Chair.
Hi, David. Good afternoon, Harley. David. So, akari ka, amo oger silkot the lowest tilbitum na ekong logi wa CIP. Ngara silkot the lowest tilbitum na ekong sin sa katome sektian namde. Ongeru ngara silkot the highest tilbitum na ekong oplam ka entertainer ngil kire laurera CIP.
Sulang rakrim senator diak sibek maska ko dai talo el altime magil kotul mgigrel kora kimo mesel altime abl all ngara 100 el mobdula 250 ege kita kora magigrel el wait ege kita abl all CIP abl almost 50% discount ege kita project ngar nga igil ngara dolong le ngara 5 6 7 dikil kotul maklol giblam ngai al giblam entertain over $2 million.
May I continue before you? So, sel do measure sel dulu asing highest number. Rarbi dem la kung buy amount reng lakra 500,000 number pa tela. In this year, this last year, do measure last year. Tela ngam la kung rekmiul contractors lolngit trapanding mahikat lang lakra sing.
Kakali mo sa tela contractor sa mlamay lolngit tawa maklungan lagi del banda.
Yes.
Okay. Aktirekal di tayo tartiyang di ungilan diak salman matangay. Hindi ako mesel at time ang laang ngaringiya outstanding al bond sa kamamal el at time outstanding al bond. How much are outstanding bonds right now? The largest one is 1.7. Okay, the largest one is 1.7 million right now. Sorry, and. But altogether, there's about 15 bonds that are circulating at the moment, with a total value of all our bonds is about 2 million. No more than that. If our largest one is 1.7, and then we had all the other ones are double. Yeah, so I mean, estimate. We'll come back with that, but I think it's over 5 outstanding that are circulating at the moment.
Hindi kam sulang awul mo to kira sa atul koramang tingek mula saying how much NDBP is really involved with this funding process ra tapong kala CIP ya kam sulang sa ikit lo ur itsim silwa sa o urat telgibal abay ngarba rather than ngariyo awul makukir contractor sila kong lo say ka funding tamoray kan maklor project tatat tirmurtra angara alsela to 15 million. There's a need to understand the same sa mam lomes rangkal number loul gi mosaw ringin whether in kiram long sa claim al uben kiram anti limit ringin ngar sel to 50. What would be better for all the sectors el kamiuma CIP mar contractors sa kita to mes ringit telor. Sa clean more pa by 250. What will be better for the bank? Kung mo 500,000, atang remain nga 250.
May kung sir NDBP lang sel gorilla Vice Chairman Wasilius. So sel 250,000 threshold local preference. So any locally owned Palawan company that gets awarded a contract of 250,000 or below. Ngo armari can waiver performance payment bond, and there's no that 250,000 is not based on inflation. It's not based on a magic number that the committee took from a tree or something. The basis of that is looking at the last 4 or 5 years project allocation for the biggest project funding, which is the Taiwan stimulus. For the last 4 or 5 years, the lowest allocation, project allocation, begins at 250,000. Okay, and then there are very rare cases where project allocations exceed $2 million or even $1.5 million. They're mostly in the $250,000 to $500,000. Okay, so looking at that. Vice Chair, and then looking at the existing legislation that only favors wholly owned Palawan companies for $100,000 and below, it's evident that the 100,000 is no longer, it doesn't serve anyone at the moment. So again, as I said in the opening statement, we have an opportunity now to update that number and bring it up to the level of allocation that is normally being practiced when allocating funds for projects in the last 4 or 5 years. And then we double that to 500,000 for as a threshold for 50% reduction for foreign companies, and waiver by request and by approval of the contracting officer for 500 to 250. And then anything above 500, the contracting officer can only reduce but not waive. I hope Vice ne answer sila specific question raw.
Basically, that was the question, and that's why I asked for the numbers. Inflation have gone up. Of course, the bidding price has to go up with it.
Anybody else have any questions for NDBP? Yes, you wanted to say something, President? Okay, okay. So if no further questions from the committee, on behalf of the committee and the entire Senate, I want to thank you, President Proctor and Mr. Fletcher. And I hope that this will be a new beginning of working together towards the construction and infrastructure development for the Republic. It's not the committee's intent to develop negative impacts to the bank, but having come from the Bureau of Public Works, I know the workload being put on the shoulders of those contractors who are qualified to participate, how stretched they are. And I look at this proposed bill as a way to remedy that. And not only that, it also opens opportunities for SMEs that are crowding at your projects and that of Palau Housing Authority to be able to partake on the nation building through the CIP program. So I want to thank you. If you have any closing statements, you may use this time to state them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senators. I think the discussion around the revenue impact on the bank is not the primary issue here. I think it's much more the risk that CIP and the government are willing to accept on bids from contractors. So as I said at the beginning, our annual revenue from these activities is about $100,000 a year. And the proposed changes will, yes, we will lose revenue, but I'm not concerned about that. It's more important to develop the contracting industry. To put that in perspective, if I may, there are 2 pending bills with OEK at the moment that have much more impact on NDBP. The first is a bill relating to a contract that we've negotiated successfully on commemorative coins, where the bank can potentially receive $1 million in an upfront fee, plus a sizable annual revenue from approving issuance of Palauan coins. That's a commercial contract which is very time sensitive, and I'd encourage both houses to prioritize that consideration as quickly as possible. The second important bill that is pending relates to the Saudi loan. The bank at the moment has a waiting list of 105 applicants for new home equity loans for a total of $4 million. We simply don't have the funding available to provide those loans, and a resolution or decision on the long-standing discussions on the Saudi loan would be very helpful, not for the bank, but for the Palauan people who are desperately waiting for those home equity loans. But on behalf of NDBP, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the bill, and I'm very encouraged by the progress that's being made on the proposed changes, so thank you.
Once again, malungil itasil se Director of Public Works ko mamadra CIP ngal Senior Project Manager kami. Sular kaloreng dong oklo bangge oilia pala housing National Development Bank kalmomrege. Aduk edel mo adul giret tegidel. Senate Bill 12/22 niya malas mal amendra procurement law mustri klorte al kung balir belaw musbil. So is para government infrastructure program. Au era domu le tigu yilia ulaw le korga acting director introducer kau tial tim kau.
Ang sulang chairman at al the information namo permanent director amo dak acting mak am sulang ngal ngarakit atu ka Mr. Lee Otto nga CIP manager ngal ngarakit siya ka Mr. Ben Asuncion nga senior project manager Gel Contracts CIP. Anyway, nga kakalbin ni sila special director of public works. Wala ko mo ula kay luto lang
Ay sulang director ay gisil. All klo raw reng officer of public works CIP. Ngaring romda sa setial CIP office Mr. Otobda totaling iliak office. Makakmolingit kaloreng arbek ade pasate ala director gisil. Mal Saudi Bureau of Public Works wasing wangaral bureau ngare ngaral ministry tela division seringi ngara function regel division seringi.
Sulah director komeng chairman watul gi benar bos. Di akmal smalo director ngal Mr. Senator Melairem. Public Works ngaringa file akmalel imal. Ngaringa CIP office. Ngaringa division solid waste. Ngaringa division facilities and maintenance. Ngaringa division road and bridges maintenance. Selguk administration armoring mungwal kora fiber branch ang alsil. CIP wal ngare ungel public works director wal procurement officer yerogul contracts wal service agreements and more blur belaw masawa da construction projects yida
Sulang director wayek tilong ra ngartiar adra abang taklora domul tial hearing amra niya diakal te al merong mga committee maluben senate malgol the swell girel tial bill agim le solicita written recommendations so mi malubong the swell girel tial proposed bill endi agi dire kalo umralo sing ngungil abot ka pong amdat et ado duurngi yung nga kadiyo ay silo last week gimle mitro our contractors malbato ko tigil contractors yung natiyan meeting to our surprise already tangar alsel tial national infrastructure program tigil kora it's with disappointment lo sing guay silo sing kora dim nakalabatok tigil gida malas malmurur tial bilalo mustriat tial lo se pols itigan magkakarehin mesois bra. I hope after tial hearing may gal deliberation sirgid may gal guk maldong tirgal contractor sa last week and sab el guk over ka tial toil mortir mal sab irelo dar sa the swiren mergidra au era bodo or top dangira arang lela urela senate mong way sige de director ko Mr. Otto Mr. Asuncion akmadangay Mr. Asuncion na o madangay madulo reng sa igal tol dolgoy hindi na kalsi elmo do okay hindi mo to bela deliberation afternoon thank you Ben for understanding Palawan but not being able to speak mong di sige de kuyila ulaw lelekong e bay mo ay segel gukor o singiw girel tiang tia Mr. Otto madangay tiam latal latob ra ulaw ra last olbil la kalwid di ko da kal Elmrael mo mere kakal sila olbil ngari ngam nem gegrel changes el ku committee adim lemay gralsel el dim basically intent si decision sa kadum karang umistri apte al locally owned SMEs small medium enterprise businesses must be mura at sila ten nation building ergit tilbor segi de director igisile paskaulaw
Sulat Chairman. Rawun mon memek maredik tu militasis mora kami tirau ma Presidenta Senate, Vice Presidenta Senate ma Florida ma Rogul Senators. Dia amal gal kami terang artiang malol tu berngin. Akti dengar yawan el kami tersel page 3 line 2. Sel masada sel again project in excess of 250. Yung 250,000 or below. Ang Armaric Cling Wave, the Palawan owned entity. And this is the foreign entity that will reduce by 50%, up to 50%. Korolong das was in sabihin mo waive or reduce up to 50%. Ada kal ngaram to kayo foreign companies are already established their value for so long, more than 20 years. Maral sila bulu. Ako ada kal suado kora mesti hard time. Siya ko ating comment, di sa yid, mawalan sa manager CIP maluk, comment rin. Sulang.
Kabang Mr. Otto. Ako lang item state position raw mo do tang actual formal claim ni ako dong position raw.
Yam sulay senator asusam na dong makti mo ongel kumase ang klera li oto tial position nga malum title nga kana office sa CIP manager CIP office al sel officer mama ang aring engineers yang kagidel ben asunsyon dong lobangget ang kagidin kel kotel wo dalim katatang Mangkaya senior project engineer direct legal project kamama tara division na public work wagel dilu director nga alam malum sel nga al nga ka obang or rebot tay gidel project malum construction work al government development rule all in the best interest of the republic senator Makmal merenga sulemra amalungil uldaso wagel dilu director uldaso amalungil challenges sergi de senator amral adungul mora practice lang kadalbang ramini games kabalment taon nga sew tangaring contractors hindi tiaygidel solution kamla senator al senate tamla otobdira Senate Bill 12-22 asob akli akabalment rebelaw hindi kal sabel mo explore apato kol balin mesois nguseb edalol takawa apato kol project to kubets vital mini games sales hal magkakadebat time ringi senator nga kaubang game lumbarang artege del luldaso malungil dakat makli resel ko tumer edal time senator mal sabel igel gukpod albang amral may ngay gid luldas bolla al bolla ito ngul ngo suwira blur belaw mar contractor sa blur belaw senator man sarati al
Sulang CIP manager other than suggestion director igisile hindi ka suam al or kadidak or amend or rabil to
Senator Kamal Saul ngaringi akot Sil gumesra tiluldas mola ang malklabo leungil sil legislative finding. Isil domes ringi aldadu re lang am notat cycle wal combined performance ma payment bond ma arwa collateral. Sil domes ringi umsodel tialbil ay geluldas wangara legislative finding. Makti suggest al sukumang diungira rungula committee ilangay gigi dululdas ul kumya ulbila matigal mo kudolabel mom sa akrabul belaw malo tur al sila alla balbol ngaringa walel al sum kudos pe ngi etang alorep trigal appropriate subsection senator sige dakura di ngi ongirung sel negament ra NDBP ra abanding kita sa edel stage ngi malubog the reducer ngi aktire kalau marang alwasen sa edel so bakul 3 contractors sel submit a payment application or tir eka the review also mungungil sel payment talgida ako ngi also mung sabel elbornya language lo sem say kita kuktang ti sel ngi le eterngi ratukora banting is a language say kita asipedel lutun ngira ang kay duludas mo la mangguk tara asipedel kung do oringi NDBP on nga seora contractor malabanting artir say gide senator abay mal so kalol si ringi mga sulem sel igel criteria nga page 4 line 9 and more line 15 say gide senatora kumaral kung asing malungil le at the end of the day also ma-officer gidra public work ma CIP rule of rail elaka rule tragimots rule tra process makmal mre nga sulem senator malayray ma senate rule say gid mang sob akli belaw ma self discretion gid exercise ringi la ama am saw ringi still nga ringa karbail dat or ringi rule beot gid am rule of rail sige da ko dim na sokal sharing adim lay gigit senator kamal saw ratial sulat chairman
Diakap silang Mr. Otob igel lual losangemera igel legislative findings o etiagid ne pasra first reading ngarinya dia kadawes al selabil malu bang ngarinya igel point out ta NDBP lasing contradict al selabil maige al au era second reading tel bill kadamo address ay gigid sel tigingela sel ko view gal girela igel el consideration factors ra reduction or waiver ra banda for the longest time in redimle amoita klaw marar gidra tigal procurement officers el tigal area fiduciary duritir el kirir el protector tial el title for tial procurement legislation na blue belaw mung tadimle til develop best management practice hindi ako mesatngil te alre el tamil do introduce tial dasal mola lo se bayda nga lotural la molbol blakatak la karbila consideration ra procurement officer lo si gagid magagid lomis aktiso kalso ay sira Bureau of Public Works lo si seral introduce tial bill raw laol emlaringa mal neungil el comment temlara atangak al senator inabo el wase ataregel bodomes al segum momes ang ngarinya bulgi agire de lomes gire la a qualifications or other was it qualifier a waiver malubang reduction ra banding also the lomes ra financial statement man standing ra kumbali lo sing kang hindi ka flight risk ringi hindi ka risk of mo matrobe mo dakal siel leng as we all know a payment tra contract tra construction na government progress based ginam rule CIP inspect ringi eka musa bill ra CIP at certify payment ra sin payable mo ra finance ko ngawdu dem mungwal ginam low roll in advance mung sel nol deswela sa atakat sa nato inabo malungil das we say dire mo so isbel s number 5 lo si pol dire kal sa el consider ay gigid el factor cook background ng kal kumbali as an entity lo sing ngari nga aluul sa elding ilom ulu raw mangira payment ring sa lamay. Again, am sula na comment sir raw open raw la mo ra ngiril senator mal ngari nga agaril mo ra Bureau of Public Works ma office ring CIP. Kalbo atangakal Senator Tabulwal.
Sa ulit chair, kutte congratulations Director Gisil, Director Manager Otodo, Mapen. Thank you for being here. Kami tanah kadang salgang gestir tiang ngot yagi. Tial community ngerti si oy ngerti to si the way reduce ra performance bond ma payment bond. Akari ko si quality mkaran. Akartial laras ko makmal bagi bebira project tak mal di bebira tayang mau mereka project. Mendir ke sa aspir kita ngumua martial ato. Maha dia kal quality construction. Kalau mau kau urur, ogi ulel mo mengatur asmentel belai leng mars. Ega milket mokra adal tirangan ya bandir tir. Emang mau dudir merail. Makbadek mo kita kabir agil school mak ilado menglo lelak. Makpadio sokal monger laseng como karentira quality lesel the way baigang. Ikaw mo olgal meriu. How can you assure us as a quality di alberiu? Kami please monger si.
Sulang Senator Tabulwal in BPW's defense digo ay silo sembral ngari nga ilagi el observation ng kamera din sa dalo ay silo sa sel wal mitigation effort temlam got mokra public works amna dinay agil bond reduction wa bond waiver sa agil kumbali el ultimate harara full bonding ra. Oy, komeng agera motirge ak mesetil mal dirga ese dirga ora dirga musubula makaler tial makakul nga sertire gunger selger sulang.
Kaman sulal dimla kom kutorang klebung nga makamle NCRC. Menso kaya kita kami aku ratu ngar tial tuang. Bomo le sura yeyid. Leng maran nangar kom dirgal amadngi. Ningong ilaktung leng maknung tira adam dengan lama sih. Yang ram saya ukti kamu kira ika mai kaki dah dalpang. Akdi kai wingit leng akmal gongel masih oi ngungil adon saya kembali melsisu. Jadi akan til sih. Di kain sih lah saya sois. Ya olga lah dia kado sangar ngi mung sebe del kuk sois pel ate alla mortir. Ya tira malal maulerir misal bol mereka win el mortir. Ma klal boil kita matmok lah. Amade el maktek telgido space kita malu tigil mereka miu kan kasih ter miu kom kora tigil no besel ngai gal telula besel dui makmalu si pakai insur segi momu ul di mesa igi se laga bo sis prati si sul toki koman suram sola de chairman para ya answer sel question na
Nam sulam Senator Tabulwal kami tergau. Yo lo chairman ambal tu ambal mo kora opting lagi el treatment el mortir el koram le makita berir di CIP direct understaff bagi trial mo harap to wala direct mo murura mo mila inspection el molegal projects sulang
Kabang manager atau
Mansaula Director ya Senator Tabulwal makura di mo dooli. Senator Malayre ya amang dool wase in the absence ragay gidal domdasul malarala the criteria malum mo kalbila urior. Ya urior raw ultoy ra best management practice BMP. Akmal ko ringilen dia kal gidal kaswa sertiam kada masi al do. Akmal ko ringilen teletail ngia adilub ra gidal time ra lamlakaw ngil garbil. El agida ang aringim sebedel improve lo giutiang way sel ol koringi a director improvement office el mo mo lapto ko lurior akmol kol way sel is a process sel laboringi abit gel girel akong balil merula ngaringi tilal project tabla rule waklam ngatila ngaral raka ang lakong balil waklam ngatila ngaral time tilaw rerel klebik rel ang matial lurior okmongu yang mo angarang tilar adal tilado nguringi nguangarang a professional expertise ra atal ngaral sila asyobay ay gigida igel kukti baby la best management practice el gidam rule el all time igel subled el lomtar basul gigida wal pul subled kadal mutul milisi ra atleta le at the end ingigida quality malum assurance igigida igel gida amblas merule senator tabalwal ma kamam umrang umrang lo siya senet umrang al kwasi igel be subled ra ngaramong igigida igel dola be improve mang dia kadalutel mo melek la ay kagid lo sisiwul batal busul mang ay kagid agel akuk sibedal kumulasi officer gidara BPW officer gidara CIP lomdas will girel expansion bang improvement office amlat kal mo correct ay kagid logya mitigation may kagid kuk PS el soblo ligid amlat kal mru loki tagid uldas mulla agid all daras ringi ay gida ko dim na sodel sere senator malay sulang.
Kabang Senator Gira bang.
Sora tele chair. Tia idar moray director malubing manager. Currently, bonding requirements are 50% payment. 100% payment, 100% performance. A direct waiver only up to one. You can request up to 250,000. Akong tabalwa si sel ruko singela CIP selabid out of the project the 250,000 ning mo allow our local bidders to participate. But that also gives you a challenge. You have so many active contracts, little bit. Would there be an advantage? I'm kind of preempting your answer. More raise your sell threshold. Mangdakto sing minimize and then aruli sell group management officer ka CIP manager la motibre ke pakakla. Instead of having 4 $250,000 jobs, you just need to monitor 2 $500,000 jobs. Akora di mura the swimmers.
Madam Saule, Senator, you are right. Sildo mes ra portfolio ra CIP rel ang ngaringia over 112 el project. El value ringia over 61 million. Seguida klunge laurior, waigel ko Senator Malayray. Ngara 250 el moraigel medra 1 million. Mang also mang dia kata bodo mes segedal kora improvement tra capacity adat mo obis segedal merungi ekadal amhal mo mriged segedal ulm katala omes sa soro malub ekada bakal mora 2020 malub ang 2019 ay gigid challenges senator etiagid gidel tagidul das mulla ngaringi ay gilgi mo rule mora mini games ngaringi bibla project el moklo ediosisiw ar contractor silmay mesel al nga response Senator Malayre ng wal dimla kalbol kalday ng adit teblong malngot o our ya do mes rat time ng dimral mong maduguk mo tel bidringi ma example kadungwa bidel me torokli mo patol phases malum stages el malas mo level 2 abibila kumbali nga mam umurang al kumasel bel 2 bodo bato ka do ngitial alungol hindi sel bel 2 ang still ang gidal garbaya sel padar malbod retirm tedirmur te sel 215 meryo mang aul magada kada malumrang at tegidul daswe senator akmase segid sel okmo dot makli kad opener segid el puller git variety, diversity contractors bela wasibil explore ngi morngi maybe help ra cost direct management akumda sen si Pedro ilmo more effective ma quality control la si Pedro assure sige da in response to your comment Senator Whips.
Medik era lutul morang ngi abang le dik tela lo se sel lolgornya senator ngi abang lo se instead ramru la 4 to 50 galel se mula tul $500,000 dire kal malungi lo daswo di sel ay issue ngi sel omway se tialbar en mangal mo galel pool tial tirgal kuksab il participate ko dire kal it's a double edged sword dire lo mongilo meseringi you bring up the issue of quality control. Let it be clear a performance ma payment bond has no bearing a quality control project yagi dile QC along ra niya contractor a quality assurance ang ra kami. And it has nothing to tell project insurance the legal language will protect the interest of government at the yes, so at the end makita quality pomomon dai ko contractor ani issues and so terminate ringi mora abanding ringi. At the end it may be related and this nga beginning discussion also the way we reduce with magrang. Oy, go sa quality control past performance but not at the time kaya gid luro gam saudri bakal mura senator ni ba
Saule, Chair. My point was maybe if the bond wasn't a hindrance anymore by raising the bar to $500,000, it would allow more contractors to participate, therefore reducing CIP's overhead management so many small projects. But ngarier baby contractor who cannot go to the $500,000. I'm not disagreeing with that, but my point is it probably allows you more flexibility to get more participation to reduce your management of so many smaller projects. Sige dadim le point na. Second question is in regards to performance and payment bonds. Contradictory language al sitel bill. However, while this was saying, if it's clearly stated in the bill that a combined performance and payment bond at 100%, whereas today in separate a performance bond 100%, a payment bond 100%. When this will a government that get a risk government if that language is changed to make it combined versus separate. Do you see that as more risk or less risk or this will a government that get it?
Malum saule Senator. Akum das pe silbo da pok answer se nga ka telgibel gamangal osange kara aldas ulgila laband. Yes, katamangat mo kra best interest the republic at the end kadong klaro sa edel los peringi el protected. Endi aldas will selgo mesra la aldas wa abe agora ultal akra assumption mo ngel mo maknit ngegi dal dictate fate tirga roguy lungil. Say gida ako mesringil as a hindrance Senator Malayrel mo sa rather than incentiving hindrance ako moral kasi our risk ka okmo kadungun mo ngegidal di mo 100% ilagid o mesringil nga 4 million ay mo 50% al improve ng unimproved ng 50 sebel mo 75% ay gay kung dasing teletal malas mitigate malub katamo address raw risk hindi tial risk kada kal actual risk ngul da sweater mo okmong nga niya mo mata arbasul etiyay gida ba do yung mandungil hindi sel akum das hindi ka ngaral matamal lekadi secure sel urior el gida nga niya contractor gid lo kumangil contractor ya sigid al 100% el bonding payment bond ma sel submit nga niya bid bond ay kita igel bundle niya at arak mora at tukora bonding umral kung asin dia kangaral matamal la again ang risk as a edal calculator ngi lul tuira klam ngatila at time kung bali am laurel mergit klungel expertise ngi mong katong mesay gigit plus sel criteria adobal wal kora karbil ikata address ra a risk is a number hindi ngira ngo ka alak mo meser ngil 100 100 edel 300 also kung sige na alam understanding oy ya bid banda atay job hindi sige del performance a payment banda sige mang is a value ngo do meser ngil lamo 200 100 bitang 100 bitang yang nga ka-agree sim ni kami tra habang kalkula si hindi ngil hindi kal alomes ngil as a risking alomes ngil 100% mot makarukoy 100 hindi kalesa nga akantil hindi masang ngarinyak lung yolel mo kami tera nga kamo reflect sa ikit yung mal masalat ti al sulay chairman
Awal bo inabo dik gua isla sing meran ngania discrepancy ra tial draft abilal ngar matat hindi sel intent tawa se kada magarang se edel mulay gamen di mo imol bonding el tablong klel a first name nga performance last name nga payment okay merong 100% malsum ngania reduction en metengal me 50% mo sel di dakal tu al sel wal ka karusul tu 100 each and 200% mo wai se dire kal segi del naring sel concern na bang kalwa se sabi tial performance band value maral merio sel every time al release a payment tel mura ise kumesering mal positive lang dire kal model al se sa resources ng albider man sa elguk pida igan next project lang la free up abibir assets ring o umsulang ra support Mr. Otob de kill rawlal mo ra Senator Inawo
Winita Sils sulang congratulations sa vessel manager ma vessel director ma makatatangal engineer of public works ang karika kurangan ra at banda sabi amil din ngawan al bundle ang performance payment band mang let's say kangwa let's say a project 1 million na value ngi ang sabi amil morabang yawasak malara ay kakitali bundle cover project both al performance and payment mang also kung mangkal contractor mo nga problem ngira performance and sa ML ngusel pandaro girel 1 million ang kapering mang also kung nga problem ngira payment mandir ka sa ML ngusel 1 million al payment mang akum da sang ko tutlela alang witcher talla abul reflector maral sa edel ngura bang le maybe les kung bangka de kalkangel mas kawa separate adiwan al bundle al both performance and payment ang ade kal sabi el word alla al mo both al waset al banda both al leng tuguk ti cover a certain amount for payment edi cover a certain amount for performance mang ako ra kari kawase sabi el nga project di OCC wabandar ngi kol dakal kakarosal banda let's say also kumang 1 million na project 50% payment Ya total bandar ngi ya 1 million. Di 500,000 na performance. Ya payment ta. Adirigal 500,000. Masum tel project ta experience sa a payment problem al exceed ra 500,000. Ending ka wati sa ML cover ra 500,000. Masigi dal ahira dal kora mo subit yang mal skumang sab ilmas ka ma information al wasing sab elorior wai saying sige dal nga ra legislative findings sa sab eda rulin mo awarding ra lam. Hindi ako dangali wasing sab elorior wai say mal ubeng diak. Ma direk al ongerung al concerner nga al legay kita al oble mention al factors al kita al mo omes al mo include ra contractors financial capacity for the project. Sing umomdas weng sabela public works ma CIP official ruli financial evaluation ma inspectora a place of business ma financial capacity ra contractor lo sing maral sab el retail project sing sab amal ederngil almo ay say gidal alang mitserni so mama kura suggested al wasing nga sabi iwal al ruli al mo mitay gay gidal language certain lam ay gay kita concern nga maktiwa ay sama al sumari commenter kami bang sabi submitter ma chairman sulang.
Sulang Senator Inaboy, aula lamura Vice President Corte.
Sulat siya nga, lo kira ko melanda ko kira aktivamente. Andri abol, Senator Inaboy nalmuto duli mga loisik sa tiap tulo ka man naman. For clarity, sa yung namda sa LD was payment bond 50% orang clear. A performance bond 50% allowed all down. Clarify hindi obviously kung naman was misperforming hindi 50% sell value. Moda ikal tablong yung korat tutela ka million and sell chance in one or the other. So therefore it's 25%. Ako na sell uli ka niya.
Sulang algon dia kamu kira nga kakautel kira nga. So gila dia kadami ka mistake at sugum ko wasing combined 100%. That's not to say was a performance amo 50 ma payment 50. It can be performance 90 payment 10. I got makal to for a value of 100,000. I mean 100%. Yes, sa ML sugo mong nodakal pera sa kanring vendor ngi now you need to pay that particular vendor to use 75% of the bonding. Kung tim tingin lo siya adim la 25% sell kuk tara talang tingit tial banda sell performance side mo. O akong sa sendakal gire el gora ruli of the sedo asetia 50-50. No, it's together 100. O imong sab la imura igel sa la performance o payment lengalak 50% threshold is necessary.
Yam sulang na sa siya klo gula the definery because blame amending niya man level taklo sing 100 so therefore I'm amending without any clarity the assumption was alakal nga committee report.
Chairman Medic ko ba almor sa lugar nga Senator Inabo. El altam and also el awan al band lungwa contractor el band performance ma payment band at the same time. Kirel matul band kirel akarosel. Mela segi del dagi del ulas mo wala al sumong sa dal kampanya. Segi del lugar nga chairman ko sa kampanya.
performance and payment. Based la gumdasu. So double sell title 40 performance band and payment band and girel tulgaros el bundle.
So the intent the directora was saying the seguido nga existing PNC liliak la performance of payment band modia kanya modi one
Egida combine.
o da kal dimo one bundle
Right.
seguido gulgoria siyang clela performance and payment band.
Payment band. Why say? Selguk suggestion ko sa relia number 5 or sel ayel mo criteria decision making sel financial capability ra contractor ngara evaluation criteria awala project weral sel evaluator wa CIP office at Thomas financial capability raw eral order tial contract and mura contractor ngarabit proposal direct mangarabit evaluation sulang chairman.
O may clarifying sel financial capability ra bidders lo mesering sel temela contractor selection. O sel procurement selection bid selection tiro o mesay ay gidim ding agulum daslo sing dire kam laniya puspa kara contractor senator inabora last week dimnakal dalil on the air dito kasi financial statement yes the accounts banking accounts tatilgibul mani other dakal soril especially gidal other bela dakal soril ulta gagidele account setir mung kadala adul wasing kakamiti mo o mesel wasing kadalolya sin number 5 merkong emsa a discretion a director of course ang kangania fiduciary do hiringi girel el wasyal so kung necessary ang di man ringira gal other request ra bond waiver al ubang kadala mo mutual discussing in real time sulang kabong senator ngira bang
You know, when you come to financial management, as a contractor gets larger and larger, they're going to get to the stage when they're going to have their own financials audited. But I intend to give the adhado sadra larger and larger. Kadam sadra tigil maatmura tuangan e o makasan mo se klolguranda. Diga the board sell liklela fence. And those do have the ability to do that. You know, maybe audited financial statements or reviewed financial statements. They're doing it for maybe the commercial banks they deal with and others. And you know, at what level of financial scrutiny do we expect those contractors to provide? Say something we need to think about, you know. Pistirat elir matalgib lo makas. Sulang.
kabang vice chairman
Ay, masulang chairman. Mlamo 320 makurati mobre mlamo to nga rokol to koy le kor kamiu mlamo matangal kamiu congratulations rokoy ager basically ngartia lour amok tegrala among sab akra ar protocol contractors mo sa baril enter into the market lo mangkala CIP hindi sel domes ra teletele la CIP maklungel auto to marail Michael project yang aikal billboard terkumia di mga tu orang ra 800,000 more pap. من agerawa settle 215 المرا سي اي بين مالوان علي دي legal project tra si اي بين ngaringa 250 ringil medio maluubeng tiang si ay ping sedo por arail obora kambang terail 1 miling compete out ringil mora kakaros al adam tasabrir الممغسمنت را OCC والبروجكت نسيجي دي أقرأ كيري هل سبب ملهن سيرية
Sula, Senator, you are correct. Sell the advertiser project tel sukum ngania budget malubang amount tel kita malat tel covering, let's say 100,000 or itongul 250. Isegit sell submit ringi yakum bali ame mkat mo kawadangi mo remula proposal sa tir MA. Al sukum marala awan mile. Yaul daswak mo segit tel 250,000 kamil contractor sa submit and ang tela klam material as a biduli for that amount itira mo ka CI ang metodo or igit o mesingil ko kasi akong balil me ngungil aral edi kal diltal araw ul klungel mauriol bla rule Michael Oriol tir olap ay gigit el batokol el criteria may sois blobongela financial capacity edi kal financial statement hindi molto la sitirga telar adrire wa klunga lang arang payroll al sumusad mom dangay lo otilo asensibil rural project li kalul total payment tra project lo alu ortir ay gigidagel baby la assurance el metnu for consideration ko domes decide mal sum tumo kausi ay ngel mo kotol kamangal la ararli el logi segid lo ur compare el moral bibirar at ay gigit mo korbila selection malubad mo choose ringel kumbalin mo ya process self evaluate templo ngarngiya 1 2 3 yuray disira at mangmatmok sa gida ya CIP ma bureau mo mo du trigay gidel walungila at elir el malas mo sensible den negotiate el mutro ira al ma ulmungil all in the best interest al sugum ngong ya contractor el base sa the negotiation process after self-evaluate akong bali. Ay gigidagil ko process Senator, so to answer your question, ngel ako tun mo mga lara lalali, ngigid amungil at tielel. Diak tuwa sing mumungil, mungil at tielel ra seldolil ra akong balin mo o da consider ti. I hope ak na answer a question ako. Sulang.
Ay sa kamle hensira question mong malungil akam sulang ay sige di ako rager luaseng raul mong aikal billboard kami masal raman maklol amount kata tapi mlamo pala takak mula sa iyo sa kopita outra aikal base ra project base ay say hindi tilang uul mong malmayo aikal protocol project tamawalay ka rail tungot mo leng tel bidding process mangiral contractors.
Sula Senator. A bidding process ati kaluul mang mayod malumri da construction project. A construction project silblan mga enguk ngarinya kalenter lol turim sel mo masagil billboard ngarinya 180 days makarang ay gigidagil temela project silbla da kay gets. Isigi da kuk mo o dobal malbod bra aklamatila time silbla full project. Sel di tanga rabi den kuk telgi belngot atletail et tidiregal ka usial mo mangal sugo mang gamangal indiregal sip il rulira al sila ko telki ka table time may gay kita gel klausi arti de kita mamliltra gelungi la otrulel sulang
sulat chairman
a project senator ang bato ka reasons why ang miyawd kita ngara island dalultoy la import logistical challenges kita ngaringi equipment may DCLR adan rule mga ringi atara challenge because akong bali ang ngaringi gidal other commitment ringi itamo albang la a rotation to rotate atulong uli la project tira rule mbato ka ulma a challenges ang ngaringi mo ulmang sin mo mesra project listing nga rin niya go all the way back and multiple years back. Okay. I hope pak na answer question ako. So lang.
Medical dibok illegal tingil manager auto adiregal one raw ula dilera project at yagi del title 4 il gida malas mel amendring hindi tilgay gidel di sesmugol contractor sa qualify participate at government procurement makadam na overburden ertir so many projects mong tasalas ilal time mong seguidal kora telgibel opting lomso del sel lo ase tangara rotational tuk merulat telgibel tang merulat telgibel sending aku merang lo ase ending dia kadiligay gidi tial yes bidding process mong dire kalwan ra delay hindi dia kadilil tanga delay bidding process lo spare niya obis ra CIP ra procurement ra igal projects selungo allocation amount ra obis ra Ministry of Finance mo obis ra President 250,000 and dia kalabid ra lowest price obviously and dia kalabid ra lowest price tadi mo 250,000 ngun mangirim dira bidder so asin tar kami aselula ko tel kamang tra lowest price 250 maklay CI selul sa dringa manager to aklay CI ang arselo asin taruli ako tel kamang trial for this amount of money. So right there and then contract sa na fixed mo 250,000. Adi mo kero kasi ang ngel ko trula kamang tanggigida most likely ng project. So it's called the competitively negotiated contract allowable ra sila title 4 ra PNC. So lang. Abang Chairman Mario.
Sulat sir ako na di galit tal dorurung niya malas melosi karole lagi gidel megrel kombali asbil me participate ra ay gidel project travelment makora kari ka si gidel megrel kombali hindi ka sabil bukmot magerul mo magebidra imol project sen ay gen sabil akwa di ogala sa chan sabil to mal pen mal benda nang ako mo sa gida dire kal arul tigal kombali men sabil mo mage bral mo klo ay kombali akti gori sen
o ise floor leader ay gagidle kung sir sa Liga Public Works mahal dia kastobra contractor A, B, C, D mongol motma gerul labi dertil actually gadwa encourage ni amonda ya even mabolda ka rogo imtadir ng social 200% funding requirement abay mugul rala awase at sukuma A mabia masya motma gewase bombi del takay ay mabi ang akbok pidel yasoy ese no mugul rala it's called colluding o ese mugul rala di motma ka rogo emru rabi tira mal highly encouraged tra language ra title 40 abong manager
sulang awira do bes direkal man leungal al do msira to ko do ra habang sige del inflation adjustment okmong sebedel ngul tungit tiang ya kumdas wa sel kamentra senator Basilius sa direkal asibedel mo address ngi makadamo taal ba whatever we can do to help mang alsepel ya kamitil consider sige del inflation adjustment sulang
dia kamiti man nenog tringi ni gora talaw dara seigi the mawasi maybe we should cross the bridge when we get there again man ungil comment ra NDBP kamiti mo mesring lasing asa kung magarang ada ngungir arang lila kamiti at akamaday tringi matsuma akamaday tringi mo ra telelet mo sulang Director, akamal to kakari ding tiada kal oversight mo. Ere se moringa time luk mo se edel kabang bang amda de guk guk update ra blara senate ra progress ra aurela public works ra igal to initiative se tira to gunia solid waste management ma road and bridge maintenance mal to ka pa technical cooperation blara ngay kinela capacity building ma o ako feel lo sing ngungil doya kagura oversight hearing, not really oversight eh. Yung hearing il white tagi del dialogue kaduk mas kumyate al mo ay sa igel activities mera public works, most especially obviously dra CIP. Okay, kwadiga malger ma angere nga kamalmuton mera nga sulur teday since hindi kaya question or tell say de bay kuila wala le gorga director mom do klum ismria tel hearing argi sulang.
Ya, Madam Sulat Chairman, tigargul senators, committee members. Lagi di orang sulem bertial tigargul introducers tial bill, tial malungil bill, malol tu berengi. Direkal di gaya gitu wadi additional kora terang tengil. Soalan bomblel. Di gaya gitu ya kora tunge direkal mal direkal waisra Kamitil wasing direkal mal patoka project sa under public works, yan molgoy, solid waste, road and bridges maintenance, facilities, CIP. Elaltam kamteng ng damlesan na sel contractor minato wasi. Sige din mula mo tikmedong amul mo. Sa direkal mo tara Cloud project or Blue Bella mo landmark project. Aktiong merita mereka suliw. Sumungan nga ako rasuala manitsira si ay pilkung tilaborit tial mo kong sulang.
Kabo.
Senator Romal Saul, mga dua direktore nglamal sa Maria lo mesir ka mo babila time mga opesa aba ungil mga kaulak me daringi umaklat kay gidulungil lagamya gilt mok lega mamamel me kukti continue aurora public core ka al time al dungil aktimo partnership pergidel logi usel PPP logngila jaika in this case direkal ngaringia project asset management related marami na to kasi related moral infrastructure git sige tawan rural siya bala on nga sirgit kada sa marial announce ngil kada umaral kung kasi modo aliya related kita mamlat kamurungi especially al sugum kadun laro liya government eng sepe dal merit mar del reserve gil ma aklamat la time git oklal ri asset management ma infrastructure maintenance and facilities. Makadim na suwak ang hotel ti ale ede igigida bibila aureol directora al aula bes igigida igel kim committee to lolo mga kamil kung ase oba blessing romiwe kut makla best interest the republic sulang
manager oto dra lo ay segel pla lobe sa director radela adlom nganiar melal mulya tel hearing adi merita mo merek sulang.